Welcome back to the Expert League, everyone. My name is Cindy Yu and I'm the National Welfare Manager here at Outside the Locker Room. I interview experts each week to get some insight into the work they do, as well as to give us some tips and tricks at home that we can apply. Today I have with me Bianca Lavorgna from Melbourne. Hi Bianca, how are you going?
Hi Cindy, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. So Bianca is a bereavement counsellor, supervisor, educator, and a suicide intervention skills trainer. So she has a wealth of experience and knowledge in the area of grief and loss. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing your expertise with you. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about what bereavement counselling is and how you came about going into that field?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose to start with, when we're thinking about grief and loss, it actually is a kind of natural and normal response um, to any type of loss. And I suppose it's the other thing to be mindful of is it's very unique. And I like to think of it as being as unique as our fingerprints. So there's no kind of rule book to how we go about helping someone move through grief. But when we're looking at bereavement counselling, sometimes people will get a little bit stuck in their grief, or they're functioning and things will be a bit impaired and they're just needing a little bit of support to navigate that. So I suppose bereavement counselling gives that to someone. It's kind of having a companion and someone to journey alongside you during that really difficult time. And it's for anyone who's had someone that they love die, really. And you can kind of connect through different avenues and different support systems out there. I suppose in terms of me and how I came to be involved in it all, and I suppose I guess it's best to say I can be quite boring with a lot of my friends because I'm very passionate about grief and loss, and that cannot be very great at brunches and dinner parties. People aren't really wanting to talk about that, whereas I'm ready to get into it. But yeah, I started off, I used to work for an organisation called Canteen. And some of you might be familiar, so that's young people living with cancer. And I had the privilege of working with a lot of young people in their last stages of life and then with their families post that. And it was just such a privileged place to be in and to walk along the side of people in those spaces. So it was kind of just this natural progression, and I decided to go in and specialise in bereavement counselling and get further training in it.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think you highlighted something that's really important, that everyone's process is very different and that's okay. So thank you for sharing that. I can definitely hear your passion for grief and loss. And you've spoken about, you've worked with children with cancer. Is there a typical client that you usually work with?
Yeah, so I suppose I've had the kind of privilege of working with all age range and cultural backgrounds and a lot of diversity actually. But at the moment, where I'm kind of working is with people who have had a loved one die through suicide. So that's kind of where I'm specialising at the moment. And then I also do a little bit of private practice work, and I work with people who've had an animal die. So a companion animal or a pet. So a lot of people find that very confusing as to why someone would come to counselling for that. But I actually did some research recently as well around that, having a look at them. And really it isn't about whether it's an animal or human, it's about the connection and the bond that's shared. So yeah, I do a lot of diversity, but they're my two areas at the moment that I'm kind of focused on.
Yeah, great. And definitely we have that bond with animals. Sometimes it's stronger than our own friends themselves. So definitely a very valid area to be discussing. So thank you for sharing that with us. I also hear that you're a co-author of a children's book called The Yellow Leaf, which I hear is going to be released some point this year. Can you tell us a little bit about what the book's about and who will benefit from it the most?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. This is something that I've kind of been dreaming about for some years now. So I've worked a lot with children and families around grief and loss, and they've always kind of spoken to wanting something that they can kind of take home and sit with their children and read and have those conversations, those really difficult ones. So this is kind of a conversation starter. And it kind of came about, me and my colleague, Ebony, Jane Carroll, is a children's author, and she's done some fantastic work. So we came together and we started to put this all into motion. And then one of the other big elements of the book is we want it to be quite visual, because another thing with children is it's not always easy to talk about grief and loss. So we wanted them to kind of have this visual representation as well. So we actually reached out to Caroline Keyes. Some of you may be familiar with her. She's an amazing Australian illustrator, and I think she did Snuggle Putt and Cuddle Pie, the more recent ones, illustrations for the book. So we're really excited. The book itself is about Andy and Grace. So Andy's brother has died and Grace's mum has died, and they go on a magical journey following a yellow leaf through a forest, and they look at kind of the different emotions that come with grief. And it's kind of this opportunity to say that grief is not a linear process, and again comes back to this kind of idea of how unique grief is, and there's no perfect way to grieve. So it's quite special. We're quite excited, and it's due out, we're hoping, in June this year.
Amazing. I can't wait to have a look at it. And it's great that you're able to, help children express it in a different way, through pictures as well, and taking them on that journey, that it isn't a linear journey. So really excited to see it when it is released. Please keep us in the loop with that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and now we're very much in a time of COVID, where we are quite isolated still at the moment. What do you think is the biggest struggle for individuals at the moment, and maybe yourself even?
Yeah, look, I think it's so much, isn't it, in terms of one of the things I've heard in the media at the moment, and I think we're starting to shift, and we need to shift, is this kind of language around social distancing. And I think we need to think about it as physical distancing, but actually socially it's so important that we remain connected to our friends, our family and our colleagues at this time. So I just think to continue to remember that we are using that language, but let's shift that among our kind of conversations so that we are staying connected with each other. I think there's, what's really interesting about this time as well is it is a lot of grief and loss. There's loss of jobs, loss of kind of sense of who we are now, and where's the world kind of moving, and what's coming, what's around the corner. So there's a lot of that is definitely going on for people. And what we know is during this time we can see people's past experiences of grief and loss being reawakened, and also for those who are in the mix of grief and loss, and having loved ones who might be unwell at the moment or who have died during this time. It can be quite amplified in terms of their own grief experience. So some of the things, I suppose, to keep in mind for yourself is the importance of routine and structure. It's really easy to kind of sleep in, to forget about our kind of wellness and going for those walks and getting out and having some sunshine. But really making sure we're working what's important to our days and our mental, physical wellness into our days, and having structure and consistency around that. So I suppose there's some tips. I guess the other thing, I saw this really interesting quote the other day, and it said, introverts, look out for your extrovert friends. And so when we're talking about introverts and extroverts, for those of you who are not aware, introverts are kind of people who get energy from, I guess, being around themselves, reading, just time out, whereas the extroverts really need to be around other people to kind of recharge and re-engage. So again, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it's just being mindful of what your needs are right now and what they look like. I'm definitely an introvert, so just also being mindful for myself not to kind of revert into myself even further and enjoy it too much. And yeah, checking in on my extrovert friends and seeing how they're traveling. That's a lot more obvious that they're kind of wanting to connect more. But yeah, that's, I guess, just some tips and thoughts to keep in mind during this really difficult time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm definitely an extrovert, and it's definitely been a new challenge for me, but I think it's really important that we're open to that challenge and open to change. It can be quite uncomfortable, but I believe that it's a really great place for us to grow as individuals when we are faced with challenges. So thank you so much for that, all that advice and insight. Do you have any other tips for our audience at home listening?
I suppose just the final thing I would say is that it definitely is an extraordinary time in our community at the moment, and just to remember to take care of yourself and others, and that kindness, compassion, and humanity. Just remember to keep giving that out to yourself and others. That would be it.
Yeah, kindness goes a long way, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bianca, for all of your advice and insights today. Really, really interesting. If people want to get in contact with you or find out a bit more about grief and loss, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so absolutely. My email address is bianca@griefandloss.net. So feel free to send me an email. Also have a website at griefandloss.net as well if you want to find out a little bit more about me or how you can contact.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of your information. We really, really enjoyed tapping into your brain a little bit, and you shared some really validating points for everyone at home. So hopefully they resonated with some of the things you've said. Thank you so much again. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your isolation introversion stage. And yeah, I hope to see you out there with OTLR in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.